So everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Wow, there's a lot of people here, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
30.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for having me. I guess I'm gonna just start with I'll just tell you my little bio before I start a slide presentation, and I'll share my screen with everyone so that you guys can see. And then my studio is very small and it's kind of a mess, but after the slide presentation, I'll kind of show you some things around the studio. And then I think at the end we'll do questions if anybody has questions. There's also a chat function at the bottom of the window. So if perhaps during the presentation you have a question, you can just type it in the chat so that you don't forget it. And then I can get to all the questions at the end if you want.
Or hand raise.
Oh, right. Or hand raise. Yeah. And do you see the hand raises or?
I do. When anybody raises their hand, I'll see it and I'll have a list, and I'll keep a list. And then at the end, you can go through the chats and I will unraise.
Okay, cool. All right. So, yeah, I have lived up here in Yucca Valley for going on 4 years. Before that, I lived in LA for 6 years. And then before that, I was on the East Coast in Philly and New York and stuff. So I went to school for fashion design at VCU, and I took an intro to textiles class there. It was just one semester. It was a survey. We did embroidery, weaving, and my weaving project, we did them on frame looms. So super basic. And that's all the weaving instruction that I ever had formally. And so after college, moved to New York, started working for fashion companies. And the first company that I worked for was a denim, like a jean company. And I was just trying to get any job that I could get. I wasn't very specific. I actually was trying to become a sweater designer because I knit all the time back then. And so I really wanted to get in sweaters, but it just didn't happen that way. I got a job in denim. And I didn't really know anything about denim as a fabric. And it's a really, like being a designer of jeans, it's all about the fabric. So it's the washing process that they do. And so I started to learn a lot about technical side of fabric and manufacturing. And I think that's what really got me into textiles on the manufacturing scale. So I worked in denim design for a few years, and then I moved to Philly and I started working at Anthropologie in the home office, sourcing fabric for all the apparel there. And I worked there for 6 years, and I sourced fabric for everything. So every piece of clothing in the store, like I sourced the fabric for it. And working at Anthropologie taught me a lot about color, palettes, and texture. And it was applied to clothing, but I think that was my really good foundation on learning just how to put materials and color together. Then I got a job in LA, moved to California, and my job was also sourcing textiles for a fashion company called BCBG. And that company was, that job was really intense and not creative. So I started craving this creative outlet again. So that's when I actually started weaving, was when I moved to California, and just was weaving in my free time, like on a frame loom, on little frame looms. And pretty soon, I don't know, it was kind of this time of like Instagram and Pinterest starting, and my work I was very fortunate for my work to really get out there on the internet. And within a year of working at that job in LA, I kind of have had enough gigs going that I quit my job and started doing the weaving work full time. And I was weaving for, I got a job doing a really big high-end collaboration with a fashion company in LA or in New York. So I wove these really small pieces on a frame loom they turned them into handbags and they went down the runway. And I got a commission to do a really giant installation in a resort in Aruba. And that was actually macrame, and I didn't know how to do macrame, but I just figured it out. And so those were kind of the first couple jobs I had that I felt confident that I could leave my stable financial situation and branch off into my own work. And so that started it, and that's what I've been doing now for I think 7 or 8 years full time. So I pretty much was doing all my weaving work for wall hangings, and they were on a frame loom. And I guess maybe 3 years into working, I got a sewing loom, and I took a class from a woman in LA, Laura, she's the distributor in LA for sewing, and bought a loom from her, took a little workshop, and then that was my introduction to a floor loom. And that, obviously opened a whole new world to me. Then maybe I think 2 years after that, I knew I wanted a bigger loom so that I could weave wider goods. And I got a 4-harness Leclerc nylus, which I love. So that's actually what I weave primarily now for like fabric type things. So my work now is a mix of many things. I still do wall hangings, mostly commissioned for people's homes as artwork. And I also weave on my floor loom more fabric type things for interior designers. And sometimes I do collaboration still with fashion designers. And then I also license my work to Anthropologie, and I'm going to talk about that in my slide presentation, but I've been licensing now for 6 years, and I design it and they produce it in their factories in India. And it's a line of home goods, pillows, blankets. We started doing furniture. And yeah, and then there was a few years in LA where I was teaching workshops maybe once or twice a year, but I've kind of backed away from that because it's just kind of a big distraction for me. So I'm not really teaching right now. And then up in the high desert, my studio we have a little store. We call it the Stordio. So most of the space is my weaving studio, and then the front is a tiny little like souvenir shop. That's under our brand, All Roads. So I think that's my little intro. And now I'm going to share my screen here and start with the slide presentation. I might show you two. So, but let me find it here. Okay. Oh, I am disabled from screen sharing. If you could allow me.
Give me 1 second, Janelle.
Okay, thank you.
It should work now.
Okay. Desktop. All right. So can you guys see my screen here? Yeah. All right. Gonna make it big, and I'm gonna play it. All right. Okay, so this first slide is just a photo that I took of, these are some of my pieces for anthropology, the rug on the floor, the throw, and the pillow. And this was from a few years ago. I don't think that you can find any of these pieces now. Okay, here's a wall hanging, and you can see my sketch on the side. So this was for actually a client in Palm Springs, and I used to do all my sketches by hand, and this is painted, and then I send it to the client. They usually tell me, you know, the colors they want. They might show me examples of other work that they've seen of mine, but then they tell me they wanted a certain size or a certain color. So then I show them the sketch, and then once they approve it, then I weave it. So the left is the result of the sketch. It's pretty the same, pretty exact, I guess. This is a large piece that I made for a store in New York. I think it's about, it's just under 7 feet wide. So this piece I did on a frame loom, and those tiles at the top are brass pieces that I cut out like with a saw and sand. It's another little smaller weaving with brass tiles that I made on the frame loom. Another piece. So the fiber at the top is hemp fiber, and it's a fiber that I use a lot. It's super rustic. It's got like vegetable matter in it. It smells like a barnyard, but I love it. I love the quality of it. And then there's the brass tiles again. This is that piece from the couple slides ago, and this is installed in the client's home in Palm Springs. The piece on the left with the pink, that has copper leaf on the hemp. So I just use spray glue, and I spray it on the weaving, and then I glue the leafing on. This was a larger piece for a home in Bend. And this piece I actually had to make in 2 pieces because my frame loom wasn't big enough. So where the blue, the indigo rope, and then the cream rope, that's actually the top of one panel. And then the hemp at the top is another panel. And I wove them separately, and then I sewed them together. And I did it like that so that there wouldn't be a visible seam. This piece was pretty big and very heavy. I think it was like 30 pounds. There's a close-up. And then this was my studio assistant at the time, Joanna, helping me on the right. And you can see the size of the loom. It's 4 feet by 8 feet. And making these really big pieces, there's a lot of like troubleshooting that we have to do, that we learn as we go, just as far like engineering the piece and how do you make something that big, with how do you build a loom that big, and then I've broken the looms because the tension gets too tight. There's not really ways to release the tension. So I've learned how to do this over the years, but every time it's like the labor of making it, it's like really heavy and hard to make. Then I started making these ceramic tiles that I sew on after I weave it. I was firing at a studio in LA when I lived there, and I put holes in the tiles when the clay is still wet, and then I can sew through the tiles and attach it afterwards. And here's a longer weaving. Maybe this was like 5 feet long for a store in New York. My sketch on the left. Okay, so now I pretty much do all my sketching on the computer because it's much more accurate representation of what the client's going to get. And especially too, if they're sending me pictures of my old work, then and they can be like, I like these tassels, or I like this color, I like this texture. It's better for me to show them on the computer. So this is a video that I took a while ago of my process on the computer. So I cut out every element, and then the drawing underneath was kind of my framework, like roadmap of the shapes that I wanted. And then I'm just copying and pasting the woven elements and then kind of creating the piece.
Well, I'll put it back on. I'm just recording something real quick.
Let me hear that. All right, I'm gonna fast forward. So those are turquoise ceramic tiles that I'm moving around and then erasing to make the size that I want. Also, I like sketching on the computer because it's much easier to change things if a client doesn't approve the sketch and wants me to move things around. All the elements are there, and when I used to sketch them by hand, I would just have to start over and do a brand new like watercolor painting. So but yeah, so I think you get the idea of how that works. Okay, so then the next part of this slideshow is just some clothing and accessory, mostly collaborations that I've done over the years. And so on the left side, those two blue outfits, that was for a designer in New York, and I just wove the panel. I did that on my Saori loom. The company sent me all those yarns, and they just wanted me to weave whatever I wanted. And that was actually more of a test panel, but they really liked it, so they used it that way. And then on the right was a sweatshirt. I used to make these sweatshirts that was all fringy, woven fringe panel, and then I would sew it on a sweatshirt and then dye the whole thing. And it's all washable, it's all cotton, so it kind of gets better the more that you wear it. This was a collaboration with the handbag designer in LA, Claire Vivier, and she saved all of her scrap leathers from her production and then gave me bags and bags of leather, and we cut it into strips and wove it. So, and then I did the fringe on the top, and she sent me the pattern pieces of her handbag, so I wove them to the size of the bag, and then she constructed them into the bags. This was just a basket, sisal basket, and then I wove that trim and sewed it on. Here's some examples of some of the licensing pieces that I've done with Anthropologie. So you can see we have a chair in the top corner. We're doing more furniture now. And the pillows, the throws, the bedding, that's a woven duvet cover, which I didn't know that they could weave that wide, because they even do king sizes and it's all one width. And this is all woven in India, and it's all by hand. So it's manufactured, and it, you know, every piece, it looks the same, but there is a good quality of the hand. So it is not made by a machine, like it literally is by hand still. So they do a really good job. And this factory that makes it is Anthropologie's factory, but over the years, they've gotten to know my technique and style and the yarns that I like to use. And so they've gotten really good at it. So it's a rug that I did for them. They made it. So I thought I would show you guys some of the process of the licensing and how it works. It's pretty fun. So there's the designer of home textiles. She comes out here once a year, typically, and she will tell me the color palettes that they want to design into. So we'll start by first, we look through all my yarn and we pull all the yarns that fit into the color palette. And then I just start weaving. So I don't really have anything in mind. I don't like sketch it out. I'm just kind of being free. And I think that's like very Saori influenced, that I don't know, I just weave what I feel like. So this was a swatch that I wove, and the designer's like sitting right next to me the whole time. And she takes photos of it once I get it off the loom, and then she made a CAD. So this is her CAD that she made. And it's collaborative also in that she'll create the CAD and then ask me my opinion. And I might say like, let's put a stripe of cream here or some, brown fringe here. So we move it all around on the computer based on the swatch. You can see the elements that she cut up on the computer and created the CAD. And then the factory made the sample. So this blanket, this is a throw blanket. It won't come out until I think holiday time later this year, but we have approved the sample from the factory and it looks pretty good. So there's the CAD, the swatch, the CAD, and then the sample. So it's pretty amazing, actually. Here's some slides of home goods that I have designed myself and either made myself or worked with my own factory partner. So last year I started working with different small artisanal factories. This is a bench that I wove the top for, and my boyfriend, who's a welder, he made the base for. So this is just a one-off piece, kind of like a crazy art bench. And this next slide is towels that I have been making with small weaving workshops in India. And when I work with them, I weave the first swatch. It's about half the real size, so, but it's all the colors, and then I send the swatch to the factory in India. I also do a CAD, so I give them the full layout and I tell them the dimensions, but they follow my colors and my weaving, and this is what comes back. And it's pretty, the weavers that I'm working with there, they're actually Duri rug, which is like a flat weave rug. They weave rugs, so it's a little like denser. They seem to really beat the weften, so it's like a really sturdy towel. At first I thought it felt too stiff, but it's a really good towel. It gets softer as you wash it. And then on the right, I cut up some of the towels and I made pillows with it. So I was selling some of those. This was just a pillow that I made here myself. I just made one. And then I've also started designing these jacquard knit blankets, and I'm working with a small knit factory in New York. And so these I do totally on the computer. I might start with like a marker sketch or something, and then I do it on the computer using their color palettes because they have a limited amount of colors in stock. And so these blankets are inspired by desert landscapes. And it's different. It's, knit is so different than woven, and the texture is so flat. So this is really more like graphic design, and it's kind of harder for me to like grasp still. Like I still don't feel comfortable with it because with weaving, I design so much with texture. So, and here's another one of those blankets. They're recycled cotton. Okay. So, where did I? All right. I'm gonna just stop the share for a minute so I can close this window. And okay, so I had told Ellen that my hard drive, my external hard drive actually crashed this year, and I lost basically all records of my work for the last 20 years that I had, you know, photos and all presentations. And I did a presentation a couple years ago, and that's when I met Ellen, and I lost that presentation. But I did find something that I had made. So I'm just going to kind of go through it quickly. There may be some duplicate slides, so I apologize, but there's just more examples of some of the things I've done. So we'll just go through this. And it's not in the same format, so we'll see how it goes. Okay. Okay. So this was a collaboration that I did with J. Crew, and it never turned into anything. Like it never was public or anything. I got paid for it, but they didn't use it. And they asked me to weave in the shape of the garment. So these are like fully fashioned woven panels, and then they, I guess, sewed them into the garments. They were really heavy, and I think that if you wore it, it would have just like fallen forward. They were heavy and weird. So that's probably why they didn't use it. But on the left here, this is gold leafing again. Maybe I can do that. This was a poncho and just some flat weaves. I think I did this on the Sowery loom. These were some handbag collaboration pieces that I did with this design company that also like were dropped. They were never used for anything. This company asked me to weave these little kind of collar pieces for their these little jackets, and then I did the production on it. So I wove the samples, and I think we ended up making like 75 pieces, these woven things. I sent it to them, and then they sewed them on themselves. Detail of that other slide that I showed you before. Got the leather collaboration again. These are all with scrap leather pieces. This was that project I did for that big designer. This was one of the jobs that helped me quit my job. Okay. There's a interior designer that I work with a lot based out of New York, and they will send me color palettes, and then I weave these panels for them. They're typically about 20 by 20 inches, and then they sew them into pillows. So these were some panels that I wove and sent to them. And these were done on the Sowery loom too. Early licensing project for Anthropologie, we did a holiday collection, and so I wove the piece in the shape of a tree, and then we did a tree skirt, and then they produced them. More of the Anthropologie stuff. Anthropologie. Some pillows. This was just one-off pillows that I made for a client. I've also sold one-off swatches to design companies that then they completely have the rights to, so they can, you know, use them as inspiration, send them to their factory and copy them. They can do whatever they want for it. So that's something that I've done here and there. Just another example of a sketch for big wall hanging. And then that's the finished pieces. Those tassels on the bottom were I dip dyed them in indigo. It's a larger wall hanging piece. This is kind of a dark slide, but oh, I can turn up my brightness. You can see the big piece there on the fireplace. That was on a Saori loom, sewed the panels together. That piece has ceramic porcelain tiles on it. So this was a little project that I just did where I was taking pictures of nature and then pairing the pictures of my weaving next to it, just to show how the inspiration of color comes. My little Saori loom. Okay. All right. So that is that. So I guess I'll kind of just do a quick little walk around in the studio so you can see all my yarn behind me, my color. And this is a weaving that I have with copper tiles. So I cut all these out by hand and then I sew them on after I've woven it. This is indigo dyed with the hemp. Okay. And then this is my loom. There's no work on it right now. And then this is actually my frame loom, my 4x8 frame loom with just stuff hanging on it. Everything becomes a storage. And that indigo piece you saw in the slideshow, here's a piece with some ceramic tiles. And then I've got my stack of towels here. So these are the towels. And then a pillow. And, oh, I also have, this is just one of my anthropology pieces. So this is a piece that the factory wove, a big pillow. They do a really good job. And I guess that's kind of about it. Should we do questions now? Oh, I see the chat here.
Yeah. I have one. The first thing that came in before the chat was Carol had her hand up.
Oh, okay.
So if Carol could say what she wants to say, and then I'll let you go through the chat.
Okay.
I have to unmute everybody. So what I'm going to say now is I'm going to unmute everybody, and I would really like everybody to mute themselves, and that would make it easier. And don't get insulted if you don't mute yourself and there's noise and you're taking over the screen. I'm going to go in and mute you because I know you don't realize it. Now, give me a second to unmute.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. And actually, the only reason I had my hand up was because I can't type. I was trying to do a chat. I had a question. So let me just say thank you, Janelle. That was really special. And I do have questions, and so do other people. So I'll just let Ann go through the list of people who had their hands up if she wants to do that. Was I the only one, Ann?
You were the only one that had your hand up, and Janelle, I believe, can see the
chat questions?
The chat questions and just go from there. But I will say I haven't unmuted you. I've given you the ability to unmute. So when it's your question, you unmute yourself, talk with Janelle, or if you have follow-up questions, and then mute yourself back up, if you could.
Okay. Well, let me ask my question, and then she can go through the rest of them. My question was about the marketing part. I'm always scared to death of that myself. And I was curious to know, did you just get going with the Pinterest and Instagram? Did people see that and contact you, or were you actively pushing, promoting yourself?
Well, I do feel very fortunate that I was on Instagram kind of when it started. Mm-hmm. And back then in 2012, Instagram wasn't a place to really like market and sell product or your artwork. And so I was just sharing my work all the time on Instagram, and it was really organic. And I think I made a lot of good relationships with people because it felt much more like a true community back then. And my following, I guess, just grew early because of that. And I think now if I was getting started, I would be really scared too, because the algorithm is a thing now, and your work just gets lost. But I mean, in terms of how I use Instagram now, I think that like posting regularly is really important. And I think it helps your posts get seen more. And I also think that like, I have 2 Instagram accounts now. I have my personal, which has much more followers. And then I have my work one, my brand. And that's for both my work and my partners. And the All Roads Instagram, I just try to, not lately, I'm not posting on there, but typically I try to post at least once daily or once every other day. And I find that when I post regularly, I get like steady growth on Instagram. So that's my perspective. But I think also with sharing my work, it's important, I think, to like engage with your followers. So I try to respond to everybody's comments or like them. And I mean, it takes a lot of time. I hate being on my phone all the time, but I think having that like true back and forth it's just like an honest way to grow your followers, and which helps your work get seen more. Also, I guess not as much anymore, but several years ago, I used to use Pinterest really regularly, where if I posted my work on my website or my Instagram, I was pinning it also. So I was making sure that it was being pinned from my website so that it would track back to my website. If people clicked, they can click through. It'll take me back to my website. And Pinterest, surprisingly, was a place where some of these really big clients, like high-end clients, found my work. But it's a double-edged sword because I also see my own work pinned to a lot of DIY boards for people's inspiration. So, I mean, I know that my work gets copied, but it's like, if you want to put your work out there, it's just kind of what might happen. Especially the anthropology licensing stuff. Like, there's factories in India that straight up copy that, and they sell it to other companies in the US, and like, there's really nothing you can do. That's like a whole nother topic. So I don't know. I just think like sharing your work, sharing your process, like people love to see that. So I think like, don't be scared, just share it. Don't think too hard about it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll mute myself now.
Okay. I'm going to go through the questions just in order as I see them from the top. So Martha asked, how do you attach the brass tiles to your hangings? So actually, I can show you this one. So here is one of the tiles. So I drill holes in the top. And for these, like, I cut them out with a saw, and then I sand them maybe a couple times with different grits, and then I drill the holes. So these take me like days to make. So yeah, I have the holes at the top, and then I just sew them on by hand with a needle and like a cotton yarn. I don't know if you can see. So, and I sew them, I go through it twice. I take 2 passes when I sew them on because they're kind of loose, and the second pass really tightens them up and makes sure they're straight. So I hope that answers that question. And Suzanne asks, how do you mount your wall hangings? I actually have a highlight on my Instagram story with a couple ways that I mount them. So, I mean, these little ones, I just do a rod at the top with string, and this is steel, and my boyfriend's a welder, so that's how I'm able to do that. He has all the tools. And then for the really big pieces, 1 minute, let me get this weaving. All right. So I have this weaving here, and this has on the back, and it's called like a French cleat or an eagle clip or a Z clip. And again, my boyfriend came up with this because these pieces get really heavy, and I need to make sure that they're hung evenly with even support. And most of the time I ship these off and I don't get to install them. So I don't know what kind of wall the client's putting them in, if they're studs, whatever. So I can't really they have to be able to hang it easily. So this is what we came up with. And maybe I can share the story on my Instagram, because I do a whole video process of showing how I do this, because it's a little hard to explain. So this is an flat aluminum bar, and then this is 1/2 of the clip. So I cut it to size, I drill holes in both at the same time, and I take the aluminum bar and I sew it on with yarn, and just a big yarn needle, and I sew it on. Then I take this clip and I rivet it to the bar with a rivet gun. Again, I have a metal worker, access to metal worker. So then this second clip, this hangs on the wall. Like, the client just drills this into the wall, and it's got a little like thing on it. And then it just goes right on. Like so easy. So it just goes on. It hangs like completely supported all the way across, and then it's that way. So this is the way that I've been hanging my really large pieces for years, but we just came up with another system that is similar, but it's visible. So that's like completely hidden. You don't see it, but this other way, it's also in my stories. Maybe I can figure out how to share it. And that is just this other metal thing that we came up with pegs. And that's pretty cool because you can see it. So yeah, that's how I hang the weavings. Okay. So Martha asks, what program do you use for your computer design? I just use Photoshop. Yeah. Oh, and someone else asked me that too. Okay. Then someone asks, is there weaving under the ceramic and metal and you sew them on top, or are they in place when weaving or of the weaving? So yeah. So like on this piece, you can see that I wove, it's hard to see. This is just flat weave area. This is the back, obviously. And then, yeah, I just sew it on top after. So I stopped the loops up here, and then I just wove flat. Okay. Martha says, love the dropped handbags. What happens to them? Thank you. I don't know. The client paid for my parts, so they get them, and I never see them again. And I'm lucky if they send me a picture. Sometimes they don't. Okay, what stitch do you use to sew the panels together for the hangings? Paula asks. I'm thinking you're referring to that one piece that I had to make in 2 panels and sew them together. I don't know. I just use a yarn needle and like twine. I actually use this twine. This is baker's twine. It's pretty thick, and it's poly cotton blend, like 60-40, I think. And I use this most for making the warps on my large wall hangings, because it doesn't break. And I mean, I'm telling you, these pieces get so heavy, so I need to make sure it's not going to break apart. So this is actually what I use to sew together that weaving. And I mean, it's just like a kind of whip stitch, like messy. It's, I don't know. It's also, you know, the weaving that probably is up to 1 inch thick at those places. So it just has to be really sturdy and durable.
So it's not beautiful.
It is not beautiful. No. I mean, you can also see on the back of this, like, these are my stitches of sewing the tiles on. Like, it's sloppy. It's not, I mean, it's not sloppy, but it's, I don't care. It's the back.
Can I ask a technical question? You're not in a big picture anymore. You're a little one like the rest of us.
Oh, okay. Do you want to see me big?
Yes.
Oh, I think that if you go to,
If it's on my computer.
yeah, it might
on
be
your
gallery
side.
view or speaker view.
It's speaker view. Whoever speaks is the big picture.
Yeah.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So Kathleen asks, where do you source your fiber? So I order everything online because, well, one, there's, you know, you guys all know there's like not a lot of resources out here for yarn, but also for me, I have to be able to buy anything again, especially if a client's like, I saw that, I want exactly that. So I have to make sure that it comes from a place that's not just like, you know, I have to be able to get it again. And I actually also use a lot of really thin yarns. So I use a lot of these cones, and this is, I ordered all this stuff from Lunatic Fringe. I love their yarns. I mostly use cotton. So yeah, Lunatic Fringe yarns. I also buy cotton roving from them because it's the cheapest place I found to buy just natural colored cotton roving. And then I use a lot of rope in my pieces. And so the rope I get from knotandropesupply.com. And I buy big spools. I think these are like 600 feet or 1,200 feet. But I think in some of the colors, you can just buy it by the foot. I've also been buying rope from a macrame company called modernmacrame.com, I guess. Just look for that. And she has more colors. So hold on, let me show you what I get from her. And for the rope, I like to use single strand. So it's like not plied. It's a single ply rope. And this measurement is, I believe it's 6 millimeters, which is a 1/4 inch. So for Modern Macrame, she sells smaller bundles. So you don't have to buy a whole spool. And maybe they're like $14 or something. So I've been playing around with a lot of colors from her. So these are all colors from her. Modern Macrame. Yeah, Modern Macrame. But yeah, I like hers because you can buy them in smaller amounts. And I also buy yarn from Silk City. Maybe their website is Silk City Fibers, and they're an old yarn company. I mean, old, like, I think they've been around since the 70s or 80s. And I like them because they started as a yarn company for hand weavers in the US. And there's not a lot of companies like that anymore. And they do more novelty, and it's not going to be like a lot of wools and cottons. They do have cotton, but they're more slightly novelty, but they are, again, like thin. They have a bamboo yarn that I love that's like so soft. I like to do that for like kind of fabricy things like this. And it's really good for baby blankets because it's washable, but it's like so much softer than cotton. It has a nice little sheen to it. That's from Silk City. And yeah, I think those are my main sources of fiber. I also use that hemp that I show you a lot, which comes like this. It's unspun hemp fiber. And this I get from hempbasics.com. And I also have bought hemp twine from them that I use as yarn, or hemp rope. But this is like one of the things I use the most in all my pieces, Hemp Basics. And he's like a really nice guy out of New Jersey. Okay. So do you use any wool or alpaca, any locally sourced fiber? That's from Jeffrey. I have used alpaca in the past, just roving though, and I've only just got it from places on Etsy. And I have used wool. I really do like using the, well, it doesn't exist anymore, but Weaving Southwest from Teresa Lovelace. So I subscribed to her churro yarn club, where she would send a monthly box of like 4 little skeins that she would dye every month. And I always go into my stash and use those because the colors are really great. They're not good for like wearable things because it's a much more rustic wool, but I guess that's probably the most local that I've ever used. I mean, she's in New Mexico. She closed her business, but I do really like weaving with the churro yarns. Actually, I can show you. This piece I made mostly with the churro yarns, and I sewed the 2 panels together. And let's see. Yeah, it's just, you can't see it, but it's like, it's just more of a rustic wool. But you get these really cool colors, like earthy colors, especially when she would use like a heathered, you know, fiber and then over dye on top. So that's mostly Navajo churro yarn in that. And I haven't washed that because it will shrink. I guess, Jeffrey or anyone, if you guys know any local fiber people that sell yarn, I mean, I don't, so I'd love any suggestions. Is the giant piece in the lobby of the Rowan Palm Springs yours? No, Carol. I haven't been to the Rowan, so I don't know the piece. Oh, and Jeffrey asked, or the ones at Ace Hotel in Palm Springs. No, those are vintage. And I think the one in the restaurant at Ace, I think that's Romeo Reina. And he also has a giant piece that's in the window at Trina Turk in Palm Springs. It's like huge, massive. That's his too. And he also has a piece in the Palm Springs Art Museum that's like purples and pinks. It's a massive, massive one. Paula asks me if I spin my own yarn. I don't. I used to spin some, but I just don't. You know, when I lived on the East Coast and I was knitting a lot and using wool, it just seems like I don't really want to touch wool because it's so hot here all the time. It's like not comfy and cozy. So I typically just use plant yarns. So yeah, that's that. And I think that's all the questions. I hope I answered everyone's question.
And spin hemp.
Yeah, I could spin hemp. You know, I have a drop spindle and I haven't tried it. Have you tried it?
Yes,
I've spun a little hemp.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was my.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I've spun a little hemp on my wheel, but not on a spin.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never even tried a wheel. You know, like spinning and dyeing, those are just like all other arts. You know, I wish I could do it all. But I think again too, because I need to be able to replicate any yarn that I use. And so.
Well, really practiced spinners can replicate.
True. That's true. Yeah, I'm just not that good at that. So.
You have one more question in the chat, I see.
Oh.
Yeah, but I think she answered it.
Oh, about
She
indigo?
mentioned indigo, and I asked if she mentioned indigo yarns, and I asked if she dyes them, but she said she doesn't really dye.
I didn't. That's weird. I don't see your question in there, but I actually do dye the indigo rope.
You do?
Yeah, I do. So one sec.
Oh, Carol, that's because you had it on chat privately with me and to click it to
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, so this is cotton rope that I buy natural. Like it comes, I buy it on a spool. This is the 6 millimeter dimension, and it's about 1/4 inch. And so I do dye it indigo, and I like to see kind of highs and lows so that you see dimension.
Right.
And I dip it as dark as I can. And so then, yeah, this piece, then I kind of like the yarn twist acts as its own resist a little bit. And then I can like untwist it once I've woven it to get like the contrast and the texture of the color. Yeah, indigo I do because, you know, it's just the best blue. Okay.
Janelle, if there aren't any other questions, I'd just love to thank you and let you know that this was a terrific presentation. Cool.
Well, it was really, I've never done a presentation like this, so it's pretty fun, and I hope that you guys can come up to my studio maybe one day when it's
I
safe.
hope so too.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that someday. I just have
I
a while to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm really honored that you guys asked me to present my work and talk about myself for an hour. So thank you.